But it was kill or cure. We believed that it was just a one-off treatment, which looks foolish now, but at the time it seemed credible. So we were either having to refund people or to just keep treating people until we were able to give them what they actually wanted.
Do you think the laser hair removal what really helped you take off?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. Jackie Smith is the co-founder of one of New Zealand's leading skincare clinics, Caci, with a sprawling 75 clinics across New Zealand.
We were amongst the first in the world to offer laser hair removal in a public-facing situation. Our first laser was $170,000. Within 2 years, we had 9 clinics, a 10th one about to open.
People delay getting the solution to that roadblock. Did you find that yourself?
No.
You just went.
No, yeah. You have to be decisive. If I make a decision now, can I undo it? So think of it like walking through a door. Does the door close behind me and lock? If it does, then that's a decision that requires a lot of thought and a lot of planning and taking your time. If it's, no, I can come back again, just make the decision. Get on with it. Employing somebody is a decision of something that's really complicated to undo because of the process and the emotion that's involved for all parties of changing that decision at a later date. A decision about, I don't know, should it be pink or blue? Who cares?
What would be the misconceptions now about the beauty industry and the aesthetics right now?
Has
there been a time in your life where you thought this is really tough and kind of low point?
But I was still devastated.
Why were you devastated?
It was kind of my
pharmacy about you being a nurse and stepped out of that. And
I think it's really common now for people to understand that they're likely to have more than one career ahead of them. It's not going to be one thing for the rest of their life. Less so when I, did my initial nursing education. But what I discovered was when I travelled overseas that I suddenly realised that nursing is a platform that gives you very broad and transferable skills. It teaches you about time management and people and communication and problem solving and working as part of a team and, lots of things like that you can take into lots of different roles. And so when I was travelling, I found myself working in the IT industry as in a management role of engineers. But lots of the skills, although it wasn't anything to do with healthcare, so many of those skills that I learned as a nurse were really useful in that managing people role. Yeah.
I understand very much so because we were just talking about me being a pharmacist and not anymore, but, working in a medical sector allows you, gives you a lot of insights, right? Like helps you understand, like you're talking about people skills, so you're able to be confident and see how a business could run, especially if you're in private clinic. I don't know if you're in private clinic. Did you work in the hospital system at all?
I did work in the hospital system, yeah.
Very different,
I worked
right?
in emergency department and just, general medical wards, that kind of thing. Not for long, but I did. And then I moved into and I worked in breast cancer research on a team for a trial that they were running for treating breast cancer based at the medical school. That was quite some time ago.
If you're thinking about someone who's listening going, I could be a nurse, I could be a doctor, I could be an engineer, and I'm in the thick of it, what did you notice back and then that made you go, you know what, I'm just going to not have a job. I'm going to do a business. Was there like a defining moment?
Yes. So not really. My husband and I were working overseas. We were living in the Channel Islands in Jersey, and we had made the decision to come back to New Zealand. And I think so many Kiwis kind of think they have to come back with something.
What do you mean?
Like an idea, a business idea, something that isn't available in New Zealand, and bring that back to the New Zealand scene, I guess.
Right.
So David, my husband, and we kind of came across this idea, this concept, and
but what made you get into the phase of coming up with the idea, sitting down going, hey David, why don't we start a clinic? Like, why did you guys do that?
Because we were coming back. We'd seen this piece of technology in the UK.
Right.
David had just done an MBA when we were living over there.
Okay, right.
I'd been working in the business sector.
Right.
And this piece of technology called the Caci non-surgical facelift, which was essentially a muscle toning machine. We could see that was taking off in the UK, and we thought, let's give it a go. Let's go back to New Zealand. And it actually originally we were thinking of how microcurrent might be applied in the healthcare sector. So would it be useful for physiotherapists, that kind of thing, microcurrent technology it was then. But very quickly we just kind of fell into aesthetics. That was the most likely place where we were going to be able to make a difference.
So you were saying, let's give it a go. Were you open to failure, do you think? Did you really have...
I don't think we considered it. It was just, I think it's the nature of the people, right? We were just...
Were you like, I'm going to make it work?
Yeah.
We've got a piece of technology, it could work, but we're just going to make it work.
I don't think we ever thought for a moment that it wouldn't work.
Why
not
is
then,
that?
not at the beginning. Of course, there's been times over our over our career where we've gone, holy moly, we're up to our neck. But I think at the beginning it was I don't know.
You just have a firm
youthful
belief,
confidence, or
youthful confidence,
naivety, maybe.
Do you see that happen at the moment? Do you see that in younger entrepreneurs and business leaders?
I think there's a degree of self-belief that you need to get going with your own business. If you think too hard about I might fail, then you will. There's a saying about that, isn't there?
Yeah,
if you think you can, you will, and if you think you can't, you're right both ways.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a degree of self-belief is massive to having had such success over the last 30 years with Caci.
I think it's you either believe in yourself, and I'm lucky enough to have grown up in a family that instilled that self-belief in me, and David likewise. Or I think you just have this burning passion, this obsession to make something work, that it's really, really important. That thing is really important to you. That problem to solve is really important to you.
What is the driving factor for you? Do you remember back in the day? What was it? There must have been something that is pushing you harder to get it. Was there something internal, or just you're too ambitious?
No, lifestyle. Yeah, it was lifestyle. I think I always wanted the two things that were always really important to me personally was to have a nice home and to be able to travel. We have friends. We spent a number of years living in Jersey. We've got really good friends over there, that friends and family over there, and they are being able to go and see them. That was afford to go and see them. That was a big driver for us.
Yep.
And I think quite early we realised that we had a really different approach to the aesthetic industry to the incumbents.
What's your approach? You must have had a different approach to everybody else.
Yeah, and we had lots of people saying, "Oh, you can't do that."
Yeah.
Yeah. And
who told you that? Like, what, friends and family, or?
Oh no, industry.
The industry.
Yeah, the beauty industry told us.
Why do you think they said that?
Because we were doing things differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't traditionally from the beauty industry. But
what was everyone doing that you were doing differently back in the day?
What were we doing differently? I think we were very focused on this one thing. So, and I think there's lots of examples of that in the beginning, where you start with something really focused and then you expand and broaden out your offering. But because we were offering just this thing called a Caci non-surgical facelift, and we were adamant that you didn't actually have to be somebody from the beauty industry to deliver that service, that there were certain attributes that we were looking for in people, but we could teach them those skills. So I think that was probably the difference that we were making. Also, I do think I really, really believe that we came from the customer perspective right from the very beginning. And, you know, almost every business that you talk to will say they care about customers, and of course they do. But there's a difference between I care about my customer and I'm constantly putting myself in the shoes of my customer and trying to see what they see and feel what they feel and designing what I have to offer around that person. It has to be really deliberate and constant. Yeah, and it's so easy to drift away from it. You know, what goes on in your business can pull you away from that, and you start thinking about, you know, how am I going to pay the bills this month? How am I going to deal with this staff member that's being a bit difficult, or whatever other issues that might be coming up, and you stop thinking about your customer and their experience and what they want and need.
So everyone else, or most people that were around you, were saying, how are you going to do this? You might fail. And you're doing something different. And you're going against the grain of how the beauty industry used to happen in the 90s. And you were able to see some people were drifting. Is this what you're saying, that other businesses may not have been as customer-centric as how you guys were in the early days?
We were quite focused on the customer experience. Yeah, what it felt like when they walked into the clinic and the conversations that they had, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What was the hardest part about leaving your job? Just going back to leaving your stable career and having money fears and identity and uncertainty about being judged and failing.
We didn't have a choice, really. We were living in the Channel Islands. We knew that, we didn't see that we had a choice. Of course we had choices, but we knew that we could never buy a house where we were living. So we had to decide. We had a 3-year-old son, and we, you know, needed to be somewhere where we could provide a stable family environment for him and future, you know, our future children or child. And so that decision to come back to New Zealand was what started it, really. We had saved enough money that we could, you know, make a deposit on a house. And although that took a little while, we lived with David's parents for a while, and we had enough to just kind of get ourselves off the ground. But, you know, bootstrapped it like everyone else does when you start a new business, yeah.
And, I mean, do you remember, or rather the question is, for someone who's wanting to do something similar to that right in 2026.
Yeah.
And if you had to give them that advice, if they're thinking about it, what would that be?
I guess our philosophy has always been, David calls it burn the boats. You know,
burn the boats or burn the bridges?
Burn the boats. It's the Vikings going, you know, like crossing the ocean, and they burn the boats because they have to make a success. There's no going home.
Right.
The other saying is one of our people, Glennis, one of her favourite sayings is, you know, you can't jump a chasm in 2 short leaps. You have to commit, and so. It's not iterative. I think you have to be in boots and all if you're going to start a business and be really committed to it. If you kind of think, oh, I'll give it a go and it might work and it might not, then It won't.
So that's not a helpful thinking. Is someone wanting to start a business in 2026 will be like, "We'll just give it a go and see." No, the thinking is, "I'm going to start and I'm going to make it work.
Yes.
We'll burn the boat."
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Jump in both feet. Of course, you have to have an income from somewhere, and lots of people start a business.
Yeah.
Keeping a job on the side. Yeah. And, they're working nights on their business in their bedroom or their garage or their whatever it is. But
so you're of the view that you should have a side income?
I think that there's two kind of concepts to think about. You do have to be very committed to it, but Jim Collins talks about bullets and cannonballs, and so you do have to test as well. So you might have an idea about something that's useful in the market. Is it? Can you, how do you know that? Is it just something in your head, or can you, can you create a minimum viable product that you can gather just a little bit more data and evidence that supports, and then you jump in and go.
Yeah.
And so for us, we had seen the success of this piece of technology in Jersey, where we were living, and the UK. So we knew that it was there. We knew that the business would be there. We just had to make it work.
In New Zealand?
Yes.
You had no idea if how is it going to perform in New Zealand? You had no idea.
No, we didn't. But we felt that there was enough evidence and similar enough cultures for the demand to be there. Yeah.
And that is a skill, isn't it? To be able to see a trend and to be observant. So people listening going, I can potentially see a trend somewhere. I'm observant that there's something happening in XYZ. I can't see it in my country or in my neighborhood or whatever. Then that gives me enough evidence to believe that it could work.
Curiosity is a very useful attribute to have, I think.
Absolutely.
And, being prepared to pick up the rock and look underneath it. I think, that face the brutal truth. That's another Jim Collins thing about going, is this working? Am I being true? Am I really being honest here about what I'm seeing and then reacting to it? Yeah.
So did you start the business and were you working having a side hustle, or did you just use your savings to start your first Caci clinic?
We were living with David's parents, so we had no rent or mortgage or anything like that.
And you just weren't full on working in the first clinic?
We did. We were, but we would... David's got this real thing about, taking a packed lunch. It was never a thing that he particularly enjoyed. And so for us, our first business was a Newmarket. We'd walk over the road. There was a McDonald's over the road. We lived on McDonald's. And you could buy a McDonald's hamburger for $1. And so for $2 a day, that would feed us for lunch. And on Fridays, we'd treat ourselves to chips with that. Not very healthy. And I look back on it and kind of think, gosh, it wasn't good for us.
What you're trying to say is you lived on little beneath your means to make everything work and go all in.
And we did that for years.
Yeah.
Years and years, where we underpaid ourselves. And
how do you cope with that? Because that sucks. It does, doesn't it? It sucks.
It's all about expectations, isn't it? Don't they say... I've been listening to a guy called Mo Gaudat, and he talks a lot about happiness and there's what you expect and what you have. That gap between those two things is where unhappiness lies. If you can live with what you've got, then you can be happy on that generally. And so if you expect lots of, a certain kind of lifestyle and you can't support it, then you'll be unhappy. But if you expect a modest lifestyle, then you can be happy on that. And we just, we were happy just building something.
Yep. And it felt nice when it started to work.
Yeah.
And you were able to have something a bit more fancier than your lunches. The question is, What do you do when you're in a business that is just about to start and you don't know how long is it going to take to get to that point? What do you do? How do you pep talk yourself? How do you keep going? How do you wake up every day and do it?
I'm not sure that I can answer that for somebody else. I think I just...
What about for you?
For me, I think I just have this kind of need to solve problems and make things better. And if this isn't working, why isn't it working? How do we make it work? And often when you come up against a challenge where there's a roadblock in the way, and there's always roadblocks, we have this expectation that progress is linear, and it never is. And so when things aren't working or there's a roadblock in your way, then you just have to get to the bottom of what it is. What's happening that I'm not seeing, that I don't understand, and how might I fix that? Who do I need to help me fix it? What are the actions that I need to take to help me get over that roadblock? Because they're always there.
And then sometimes, though, people delay getting the solution to that roadblock. Did you find that yourself? Did you find like you've come across in the early days you have had a roadblock and you were supposed to solve something, but you didn't? You just held off?
No.
You just went for it?
No, yeah. You have to be decisive. I think that's an attribute of a successful entrepreneur. You have to make decisions, whether you make them quickly or slowly, that depends on the situation. And there's a really nice, a story about or thinking tool about how you make decisions, whether it's fast or slow. And that's, if I make a decision now, can I undo it? So think of it like walking through a door. I think it was Jeff Bezos that said that, actually. If you think of it about walking through a door, can I come back again? Does the door close behind me and lock? If it does, then that's a decision that requires a lot of thought and a lot of planning and taking your time. If it's, no, I can come back again, just make the decision. Get on with it.
Can you give me an example of something in the last 30 years that helps us understand that?
So, an example. Well, employing somebody is a decision of something that's really complicated to undo. So that requires a lot of thought and consideration, getting that right, because of the process and the emotion that's involved for all parties of changing that decision at a later date. A decision about... I don't know, should it be pink or blue? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Try it, because you might change it.
Branding.
There's
hiring.
Yeah.
Branding and hiring.
Testing.
Yeah.
Like you can, if you need to, should it be this colour or that colour, or should it look like this, or
what about if you...
Should I have the chairs in my reception arranged a particular way? Doesn't matter. Just do something.
Right. All right, you guys, I want to tell you about one resource that I look into and check all the time. It's helped me in my own business journey, and it's made me a better business owner, a better podcaster, helped me stay on top of all the business news that are happening in New Zealand. It's called NZBusiness Magazine. It's one of the New Zealand's oldest and most trusted sources for business stories, insights, and analysis for SME owners and leaders. So we've partnered together to help bring these kind of conversations like this one to more Kiwi entrepreneurs across New Zealand. So if you want to stay on top of what's happening in business, visit nzbusiness.co.nz today. Hello, thanks for watching this video. Quick note, have you subscribed? Over 90% of people who are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or on Apple are not subscribed or following. Please do so now. It's so simple. The button will be around the screen somewhere. You either hit subscribe or hit the follow button or leave me a review. It will help me so much, helps me grow as a channel and support my work. So I really appreciate it. Okay, back to the episode. What about when it comes to having, like you've just, bought your new market or built your new market clinic, and you've got money, you want to invest it into certain parts of the business to help it grow, and the business is ticking well, but you don't know where to invest your money next. Let's say the first 90 days or the first 180 days or the first 2 years of that clinic. Of course, you have business advisors, or maybe was it just you and David who made the decisions, and you were like, okay, we've got, let's say, $5,000, and you didn't know where to spend it, or maybe $1,000. How did you make those decisions on like using of your funds to build your business?
It's about opportunities. I don't think we ever kind of got to the point where we've got, oh, look, we've got some cash. How might we deploy that cash? It was always, here's an opportunity. How do we find the cash or the funding that we need to make the most of that opportunity? So moving into laser hair removal was a really great example of that, because we were amongst the first in the world to offer laser hair removal in a public-facing situation. Until then, it had been laboratories and universities and that kind of thing. So those pieces of technology were really expensive. Our first laser was $170,000 almost 30 years ago. It was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
But it was also a big opportunity. So, figuring out how we could fund that and putting together a plan for making that work, that was the decision, not kind of the other way around and going, oh, we've accumulated a bit of cash.
Gotcha. So you're looking at opportunities
I think
expansion.
Yeah, no, I think opportunities come at you.
Yeah.
That's been my experience anyway, is if you have that curiosity, if you are looking at what's out there all of the time, if you're looking at trends, if you're listening to your customers and what they want and what's unfulfilled, for what needs are unfulfilled for them, that kind of thing, then you see opportunities and you're thinking about how you make the most of those opportunities.
What was the earliest sign that what you were doing was bigger than just one clinic?
When people came to us and said, I want to do what you're doing. And that's where we had to make the decision about, do we just sell them this piece of equipment or do we build a franchise? And we realised that in New Zealand, because of the size of the market, that actually building a franchise around that was going to be stronger in the long run. So build a brand rather than just a piece of technology, and that way you get more control over how that's delivered.
Yeah, standards.
Yeah.
And when you did decide to do franchising as a model, what problem were you first hit with that you were like, gosh, why would you do that?
It started off with we made the mistake of selling a few machines to start with. So we had people out there that had a couple of machines and that were using the brand and the brand name, and we had to figure out how to pull those people into a franchise rather than a license agreement, which was what it was initially. And that was pretty tricky.
So did you
sell... They were very resistant.
Did you sell the equipment first and then you were like, oops,
with a kind of a license.
It
was a while ago, but so the details are a bit vague, but it was a kind of a licensing program as opposed to a franchise.
Yeah.
And then we realised quite quickly, actually, if we start pulling hair removal into this, then we need some control over who's delivering those services and that kind of thing. So it became apparent.
What about franchising as a model solving a problem better than any other problem, any other business model for this industry? What was it solving? Was it solving capital, speed, or talent?
Franchising's an ecosystem. So you start building an ecosystem, really. What's the problem that it's solving? It was solving a business problem, really, was that if we were going to build a brand that was going to deliver for our customers what we wanted it to deliver, then we needed to have more control. And the way to have more control was to have a franchise, or that's where we got to in the end anyway.
Yeah. And if you, I suppose the question here is, what are the 3 non-negotiables that you would demand from any franchisee in 2026? Because now it's a franchise model and you're wanting to have a control over how things look and how things run to keep up with the brand and making sure that it remains to its truest origin. But what are the non-negotiables that you look for?
Non-negotiables. So one of them is belief in the mission, really. And the mission is about the value of skin confidence and delivering that for predominantly women, but for customers. So I don't think you can be a successful franchisee in our model if you don't really care about that. If you're in it just to make money, then it won't work for you. It's about passion and belief in the mission. So I'd say that would be number one. The next thing would be ability to build a team. All businesses teams are crucial. If you can't be a leader of people and manage that service, then that's not going to work either. So what would the third non-negotiable be? I think it probably is about support from people around you. So we have found that our most successful franchisees, if they don't, they're either a partnership or they have somebody really close to them that helps them work on their business. So we have a nurse and a beauty therapist in our Palmerston North clinic that work incredibly well together. They've been very successful. We have some franchisees that are husband and wife teams. We've got had a couple that have been, mother and daughter. So, they bring different personalities to the business and different kind of skill sets and attributes, which I think gives them a strength.
What about red flags? Red flags, you would, even if someone had the money to invest as a franchisee, but there we would be like, I don't think you're right.
The biggest red flag is somebody who thinks that they're just going to move in and have a nice little business and it's going to be a lifestyle thing. So
what's a nice little business with a lifestyle?
Well, I guess
what does that mean?
I guess there's a perception that you could have a business that would give you an income, but you can do it sort of school hours and 4 days a week, that kind of thing, and take all the school holidays off. That never works. And any business there's challenges and hurdles to get over. There is no such thing as an easy business to run, I don't think. There can be times when it is easier than others, but it's not.
What you're saying is to expect to work really hard.
Yeah.
For a good number of years. I mean, how long does it take for a franchisee to make good money from this?
I think more recently it's been much more challenging. The whole COVID, post-COVID, the economy recently, all of that kind of thing. Prior to that, I would say about 18 months.
Yeah.
And for a new clinic to open and get to making a reasonable profit. Yeah.
I think there's somewhere online it said that 64% of clinics have revenues over $1 million. Is that about right?
Yeah.
What would you need to do to be able to get to that level, to that bucket? And what do
As a business partner or franchisee, yeah.
I think, franchisee, yeah.
So we run a membership model, and there's lots of reasons about that, and I can talk to that if you like.
Please, yeah, of course. It's key, yeah.
Maybe I'll just speak to your question first, and then I'll come back to the membership model itself. But in order for a membership model to work, those customers have to understand why, and they have to want to come back. So again, it's about the experience. Can you deliver on the experience that customer is expecting? And then it's about building up your membership. How many of your how much of your revenue is comes from members versus how much are people that just randomly walk through the door.
And what have you found with this new model of having a subscription?
Ideally we would have people that are 80. It would be 80-20.
Okay.
So 80% of their revenue ideally would be subscription.
For it to really
for it to thrive. But then you need the numbers as well.
Yeah.
So you can't, that only works if you get to. So ideally it would be about 400.
What's the ideal
members?
400 members? Yeah. And back before COVID, it would take 18 months to get to a certain level of scale.
Around give or take. Some good operators would get there quite quickly in less than a year.
Yeah.
Some people that are really driven.
It could take a little bit longer. What have you found to be, apart from the number of clients and the 80-20 rule, what else, if someone listening thinking, okay, I might be interested in doing a franchise with Caci, with some other business or whatever, what other factors would make it successful that you have seen throughout your 75 clinics or so?
Factors other than
working hard, other than going all in. Perhaps it could be technical skills, or it could be people skills, or it could be selling, or are you able to speak really well? Or
I think selling is definitely, there needs to be somebody in the business
or
that
even
can
marketing,
sell.
Because you guys do support your franchisees.
We do the majority of marketing for our franchisees.
Yeah,
building.
Yeah.
Recognition in the community, being part of the community that you're in, which kind of tends to happen more in regional clinics than in the city clinics.
Right?
That's a harder piece in the city. It's essentially those people that are most successful are able to have a team that really buy into caring about their customers and making sure that their customers get a great experience and get what they think that they're getting.
Because what would be the misconceptions now about the beauty industry and the aesthetics now?
So I've never thought about what we do as beauty as such.
Yeah.
I think beauty is such a loaded word, and even more so today than it was 30 years ago with social media driving a lot of the narrative about the way that people should look, that kind of thing. So for me, what we do is about people and their confidence and feeling like they look their best. So there's no one particular way that any person should look. They just need to feel like they look like themselves and a good version of themselves. So that essentially comes down to healthy skin, because if you have healthy skin, then that reflects a general state of health to others, and it makes people feel good. Then on top of that, there's specific kind of things like, do I have a frown, or do I have thin lips, or that can be addressed with things like injectables. But fundamentally, that base piece is about, do I have healthy looking skin, and do I feel confident in that?
we're talking about like building the franchise and having franchisees, and it takes a lot of hard work. Having a franchise like Caci is not a passive income.
No.
That's a myth.
Passive income is a really interesting thing, and I think I've looked at it across the medical sector because doctors are extraordinarily highly trained people that it costs them a lot, not just in money to get to be a doctor, but in time and effort and personal hard work. Then they find themselves in a situation where really any income that they earn comes from their own two hands and their intellect. And it's really hard for them to expand outside that. So the medical profession are often thinking about, or those that work privately, how do they get passive income? In a business, you end up with if you can have people working for you, they're generating income. In small businesses, a lot of that still comes from your own personal effort. The bigger the business becomes, the further away from that coalface that you become. I guess that's when it starts to become considered passive income.
Because you started at Clinic 1 in Newmarket. How was it super easy to get into Clinic 2 and Clinic 3 and Clinic 4? Or was it
just felt like the next step?
The next step forward. When did you start Clinic 2 after Clinic 1?
So actually my sister started Clinic 2 and that was in Wellington.
Cool.
Yeah. So she and her mother-in-law, so there's a partnership again, right? So they ran the clinic in Thorndon for a long time, and it was a very big, very busy, very successful clinic.
How soon after you launched Clinic 1, do you remember?
It was less than 2 years.
Okay.
So it might have been even less than a year.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly.
Is there like a rate? Like you've got 32 years and you've got 75 clinics. Would there be like a rate? Like every year you would have open like 2 clinics, 3 clinics, 4 clinics?
It was very...
Was it like this, up and down?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was really more... we weren't promoting ourselves as a franchise at that point in time. We were building the business and how it should work, and figuring out a whole lot of things. Like laser hair removal was really difficult to start with.
Was it? Why is that?
Very difficult. Well, in those days, we thought it was a one-off treatment, and very quickly realised it wasn't, and understood that, and it was sold to us as a one-off treatment. But we had to figure out all of the settings and so there's a big difference between a piece of technology and then how it's delivered to the customer to get what that customer needs. That gap in the middle, that learning that we got at that time, that has stood us in good stead, and I think that that's one of the core capabilities of our business is filling in that gap. How do you take a piece of technology, figure out what all the settings are to get the right outcome? How do you train people to deliver on that? What additional knowledge do they need to give a consistent outcome? How do you deal with any potential adverse events? Because there's always a risk of adverse events. How do you manage all of that? All of those things that wrap around a piece of technology, that's a core competency of our business. That's what we had to develop, and we developed that really early when we were figuring out laser hair removal.
And do you think the laser hair removal, what really helped you take off?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. But it was kill or cure. It was absolutely, we were up to our nose in it.
Really?
Because when we bought into this piece of technology and we believed that it was just a one-off treatment, which looks foolish now, but at the time it seemed credible. So we thought we'll double that, and we'll say, we'll guarantee you 2 treatments for. So we were providing guarantees of outcomes.
Wow.
and figured out really quickly it wasn't a one-off treatment. So we were either having to refund people or to just keep treating people until we were able to give them what they actually wanted, which was, an armpit or a bikini line or whatever that didn't have hair on it. We had some very late night, and the technology wasn't very reliable either, so it would break down quite a lot. The people that sold it to us were in Wales. So, David spent a lot of time trying to fix lasers at 2:00 in the morning because that was the only time that we could talk to them.
Oh, wow.
So
Right.
there were some really big hurdles to get over. We had some trips overseas to see other people and see what they were doing, because nothing was digital in those days. You couldn't talk to somebody on a video. Barely could talk to people on the phone. You had to go and see them and figure out what other people were doing and learn from other people and build this kind of very disparate, widely spread community of people trying to make hair removal work because the opportunities were great in it.
So basically, Caci has grown because there was a piece of technology from overseas that hasn't made its way to New Zealand yet. And you've been able to, because you were traveling, because you were away, because you moved, you're able to see something that could potentially work here. Yep. And then again, you've done it again with a laser. And then, of course, you were able to expand a lot more into other areas of skincare and treatment and,
Yeah, I think there's different ways of innovating, and to start with,
how do you,
there was timing. They always say that timing is a really important part of business. So, we had a relationship at one stage. We tried to set up a business that was adjacent to Caci, but started dealing with all of the surgical parts of it, like breast reductions, blepharoplasties, that kind of thing. It didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work for a number of reasons because, for a number of reasons. But I think timing was a big part of that.
Could you expand? That's interesting. In terms of,
I think the market wasn't really ready for that. Yeah. So,
as in having a surgeon come in and do reconstructive surgery within the clinic.
I think our customer base was a very different customer base to the customer base that was looking for surgical options. I think it's much more blended today than it was then.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think that that transition between having skin treatments to minorly invasive things like injectables to more invasive but relatively simple things like a blepharoplasty to a facelift, that kind of transition, I think people will go down that pathway more readily today than 20 years ago or 15 years ago, whenever we did it. The timing was right for us to introduce laser hair removal into New Zealand. A piece of technology, the wider business community wasn't alert to new technology and the impact that could have in the business opportunities that it brought. So we were able to get a lead on what was going on in the market. So that's where we innovated. Once everybody else kind of realised that, everybody was looking for what's the next big piece of technology. And I actually don't think it is about technology now. I think it's about business systems. So that's where we moved from. There were a number of innovations. Once was getting into new technology before everybody else. The next thing was using nurses for injectables and figuring out how to do that in a safe, consistent, reliable way. And we led the market with that. And then we realised that for customers to get the outcome that they wanted, they generally needed. It's not a one-off thing. We'd like to think that there's instant fixes to things, but the reality is we're dealing with the human body, and an instant fix isn't really very achievable. So if you want an improvement in your skin, if you want laser hair removal, as we talked about, as a course of treatments, that courses of treatments were what was really needed. The problem was for customers is that life gets in the way. You know, you think, okay, I'm going to do a year's worth of laser hair removal, and you start off, but then suddenly, I don't know, you need new tyres on your car, or your kids need soccer boots and you can't afford to do it now, and then it just kind of fades away, and you haven't delivered on what you really started out to deliver on. So that's why we created memberships, to make it so much easier for people to get to the end of the course that they were initially committed to, and get the outcome that they were actually looking for. How do you make it really easy for people to get that? And a membership was the thing that we came up with. So that was a different kind of innovation to just what's the latest and greatest piece of technology. And so now I think what we do is we're scanning the horizon all the time for what's coming down the pipeline in terms of technology. But to get healthy skin, there's lots and lots of different pathways to that. There's lots of different treatments. How do you combine those treatments? Where does the truth lie? What is the most effective, most cost-effective, least invasive way to get the outcome that you want? And I think that's our job, is to pull all those pieces together and go, is microdermabrasion still relevant today? Or because it's been around for 20 years, should we ditch it and replace it with something else? Or should we keep using it? Because actually the truth is it's still a really amazing treatment. So I think that's where we're really good at going. Actually, we're going to have 4 of these, 3 of these, 2 of those, and we're going to spread it out like this over 12 months, and that's how you get the outcome that you want.
Interesting. And that has worked for you?
Yes.
Yeah. And how are the customers saying? What are they saying? How are they responding to that? In terms of having...
we certainly have customers that, we've got customers that have been with us for decades. They love it. Yeah. And it's either, so that's about understanding your customer. So there's lots of people that Caci's not for them. They're not Caci customers. They're often younger people, might not be a Caci customer, and that's okay. I think that's part of being a business, is really recognising who your customer is and designing your services around those people, not trying to be all things to everybody.
When did you start to understand who your customers were?
Oh, quite a long time ago. Yeah, I think initially I was one of those first nurses. So this was the testing thing. I was the first nurse in our group to deliver injectables. And so for a number of years, I would be in and out of lots of clinics in the Auckland area treating customers. So I was face to face with those customers and talking to them and listening to them and getting to understand actually what they really needed, so that we didn't have to rely on, surveys and, I don't know, things that... encounter groups and done by third-party people to figure out what our customers... We knew it because we were talking directly to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're pretty hands-off at the moment, right, with the business?
Yes, I am now,
You're what sort of position are you in right now? Like, what do you do?
I'm a director on the board.
Director on the board, okay. So your job... involves you looking over business operations, visiting the clinics?
No, not at all.
You don't do any of that?
No, I'm not operationally involved at all.
Oh, okay.
So strategy, really.
Okay.
And governance. So
how many people on your team that makes decisions with you?
So we have 4 directors on our board.
Yep.
Yeah. And then a leadership team in the company now. So a CEO, general managers, that kind of thing. So,
right.
Yeah.
And what are the combined skills that they have that makes you guys a great team to really deliver an amazing strategy moving forward?
I think it's I know I keep going on about it, but it's that understanding that customer need is one part of it, and then the other part is that curiosity thing. So what is it that people really need, and how might we deliver it in a way that's different to everybody else?
You always want to do different to anybody else rather than better, or you want to do better and different, or which one is more important, better or different?
Well, you want to be best in the world, right? So that's that whole hedgehog concept where, like, what drives your economic engine, what are you passionate about, and what can be best in the world at? And we're looking at that all of the time, like all of those things, they have to work together. So do we want to be better? Yes, but I think you have to figure out what you're being better at. And you can spend a lot of time looking over your shoulder at what other people are doing. I think you have to keep half an eye on what's going on in the market but you can't be distracted by what your competition are doing or the way that they're doing it.
Right.
You have to be thinking about, what do we do? How do we do this?
Right.
How do we make it better?
Right.
This team of people. So building your team, that's the key thing, I think. And
part of your team is the people in your team right now, the people who are making decisions, are people who really understand the customer on the ground. Like, one of the people in your team must be the reporter on the ground telling you this is what's happening. The other person, obviously, like a mixture of skills. The other person could be what do you look for in your team? Why is your team so good and maybe excellent that has taken you thus far? And I'd like to get into some mistakes after this. So,
okay.
Yeah. So we've got customer, like really understanding the customer. So if someone is thinking, I need a team right now for my business, I need to find people who really are customer obsessed. Has someone in the team has to be customer obsessed. The second person,
it's not just customer obsessed though, because there's our customers and then there's everyone else's customers. So the mission that we're on is important as well. So it's the customers that this mission is serving.
Right.
That's what they have to be passionate about.
Yeah. What else do they need to be really good at? You can have top 3 if you like to make it easier.
I think there's the people that I think that I really admire in our organisation. They're all really hard workers. Like, they put in the time, and they don't do it because we ask them to do it. They do it and because they really want to. They want to make a success of the business, and this. I don't know why, but there's something about our business that people really love. And so we've got some really amazing people inside our organisation, and some of them are new and some of them have been there for 25 years. So we have this really nice blend at the moment of deep experience about our industry and our customers and where our strengths lie, and the other side of that is really fresh thinking. People going, why do you do it that way? Couldn't we do it this way? Asking questions, that kind of thing. So that would be another thing then. So you go, passion for the customer and the mission that we're on, somebody that asks questions. You want to, so there's always balances, there's always trade-offs, right? So franchising is about building systems, repeatable, scalable, we do it this way until we don't, until we find something better. And so many businesses or organisations get stuck in the repeatable systems, and that's where bureaucracy sets in, and you find yourself going, oh no, that's not the way we do it around here. We do it this way. You have to be able to make it that people are able to go, feel free to say why.
Challenging.
Yeah.
You got to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
To be good, to be different.
Wasn't there a great story about somebody that, roasting a turkey? And have you heard that story?
Tell it to me.
So a mother was teaching her daughter the Thanksgiving turkey and cooking they cut it in half and they stuck it in 2 dishes and put it in the oven and whatever. And then the daughter started going, well, why do you cut it in half? And then it went back, well, because my mother always did that. And then my grandmother did that. And then why did your grandmother? Well, I didn't have a dish that was big enough to put a whole turkey in, so I cut it in half. And so this whole tradition in a family of doing it a particular way went back to this one thing. So what was true when that system is built isn't necessarily true today, and you have to be able to flex and bend and evolve.
I mean, how people looked at the Caci clinic in the 1990s is very different to how they look at it right now. Yeah,
I think so. It's really different now to what it was then.
I want to get into that, but I did tease up that we're going to do mistakes. So maybe we'll get into mistakes and then we'll look into that later. But over the last 30 years, you must have made lots of mistakes.
Well, I talked about our kind of little foray into plastic surgery. We've looked at adjacencies a number of times.
And I may just sort of phrase mistakes. I don't like the word mistakes, but it's just challenges or things that you've decided to go into that cost you a lot of money. But there was a major lesson that have made you much better now. That's what a mistake is.
Yeah.
So what have you done that cost you heaps of money, heaps of time, and then you're like, it was because I did not go over my systems, or and then but you've learned so much that actually helped you be so much better today.
So a lot of our mistakes have been in looking at businesses that we could add on adjacent to Caci. So we looked at, I referred to the surgery part of it.
So did you, sorry if I may ask, did you consider adding surgery, and you did add surgery and you invested in that, and then it did not work, and then there was a sense of like we lost money in that, but we had to try it. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you actually did implement it.
Yes.
And it flopped basically. Or
we just didn't get traction.
No traction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there was, and we didn't get the people right either. There were difficult personalities in there, all sorts of things like that. Lots of reasons why it didn't work. But yes, that's right. And I think that...
Can I just ask, sorry,
Sure.
So what did you learn from that you would teach other people now? I know we talked about timing.
I think we jumped in. Yeah, timing is relevant, very relevant. I think that now it's that bullets and cannonballs thing. What's your minimum viable product? How can you test it without putting too much money into it?
Right.
And see whether it's got legs or not, and then go full steam ahead. So
if you had gone back to the surgical step, you would employ one person to do the surgery, and you would choose one clinic, or
you might find a way of. Let me tell you a story that's completely outside our industry, but I love the story. So, I don't know, 20 years ago, New York decided it wanted to become a more pedestrian-friendly city. So, and I don't know whether 20 years or how long ago it was, but roughly a while ago.
Right.
And so they employed... a woman, and I can't remember her name, to start looking at ways that they could do that. How could they rearrange the structure of the city? And Times Square was the initial exercise. So Times Square used to be this hugely big intersection that was busy, multi-lanes in all directions, lights, the whole shebang. And converting it from that to a pedestrian precinct was pretty risky and very costly. And so what she did was she said, she looked at what's the minimum viable product. So they spent, I don't know, let's say $100,000, which was small fry compared to what it was going to cost for the whole project, on advertising that for this long weekend we're going to shut down Times Square, and or that intersection, and we're going to make it pedestrian. And so they pulled out plastic chairs, they pulled out barriers that you see at concerts and around building sites and all of that kind of thing, and they temporarily re-diverted the traffic and turned it into a walking precinct, and then observed what happened. And then they learned. And so they did that 2 or 3 or maybe more times before they actually spent millions and millions on going, yes, this is going to work. Yes, we can re-divert the traffic and it's not going to block the whole city up. And it's been a huge success for them. So what's your equivalent of doing that?
Exactly, right. I understand that.
Yeah,
like not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Absolutely. And, spending the millions because you think that you've got an idea that's just going to work.
Yeah.
You don't know that. You never know that. So that was kind of one mistake. Another mistake, I think, was that we thought that women's gyms would be a great adjacency. And so we bought a franchise called Contours, and I don't think it even exists anymore. And that was really difficult as well. So
why do you think so?
The franchisees thought, to start with, they thought it was really exciting. Yay, Caci's bought, it's tired, it's old, it needs refreshing. And what we learnt from that was there were a number of people inside that organisation that were, oh, yes, we want change. Oh, but not that change. And the problem that we had with that was we hadn't done the right due diligence on the franchise contract, and we didn't have the controls in that contract to push through the change that needed to happen. And so we failed. There were other things around that as well that led to that. But ultimately, we couldn't make it work because we couldn't make the changes that we felt that needed to happen to make it work. And that essentially came down to not reading the contracts and not understanding it, jumping in too quickly.
Right. What else do you think would be interesting adjacent business to Caci that you have explored or you could be exploring?
Hair. Tried hair. Yep. We bought the Tony and Guy franchise for New Zealand.
Wow, did you?
But again, we made the mistake that, and I still think there's huge opportunities in hair, that I hate that you go to a hairdresser and you really don't know how much you're going to spend.
Right.
You kind of go in for cut and colour and you end up with a bit of this and a bit of that, and it takes 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever. Are you going to be there for 2 hours? You're going to be there for 6 hours. You just don't, there's all of these unknowns.
Yeah, that's right.
And I personally get agitated about that.
Right.
Some people love it. Some people they treat it like a spa. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's
I love
a tangent.
This. No, this is actually amazing. So were you looking into creating a new model for hairdressing?
Yeah, we were. But again, we were foolish and...
Why it was
somebody else's franchise, really. And so they had their own. So when we started to make changes here in New Zealand, the master franchise back in the UK went, no, you can't do that. It's our franchise. Yeah. So
have you considered buying your own Caci hair?
I don't know that we'd call it Caci. Yeah, we
whatever, and then just
we kick that can around on a fairly regular basis. But I think there's probably other things in life now.
Right.
And starting a new franchise.
Cash flow is important in business.
Absolutely, yeah.
What did you learn? What did you learn the hard way about cash flow?
Cash flow is your oxygen, right?
Yeah.
You can't do anything
without.
Unless, and so that's the balance that you have to keep is one eye on the money and one eye on the costs and one eye on delivering for the customer. But ultimately, the cash that you get in or the revenue that you get into the business is a consequence of you doing the right thing by your customers. So
chicken and the egg. Cash.
It is the chicken and the egg.
Cash.
It is the chicken and the egg, but your customers have to feel like they're the first.
Right. Okay. That's a good point. What do you define the competition in 2026? You know, what is competition for you? Like clinics, injectors, at-home devices, TikTokers, or something else?
No, I think the changes that in the industry, so two things have happened in New Zealand, broadly. One is that we now have Australian-based chain clinics that have moved into New Zealand, and then there has been a rise in the number of aesthetic injectors. So a number of nurses that have set up their own business and are providing services. And so most of those are focused just on injectors, but some of them are providing other services around that as well. And that has happened quite quickly over the last 5 years, that expansion. So I absolutely celebrate the fact that nurses are out there running their own businesses. I know that probably sounds a bit strange when they're kind of competing against us. I think a lot of the customers are probably slightly different to Caci customers. There's an overlap for sure, but
I mean, even doctors are doing it now.
Oh, there's a lot of doctors doing it as well.
Even dentists are doing it.
Dentists,
that's crazy.
And other related pharmacists. There's some pharmacists doing it.
Or in pharmacies.
And so what I think personally, my personal view on that is I think that that's where healthcare is going, is that specialisation is in many ways is decreasing across lots of areas of the ability of different healthcare practitioners to offer different services. So I think this is aesthetics is a little piece on the side. I think the authorities don't really like to think of aesthetics as healthcare, but it's healthcare practitioners that are providing most of the services in this space.
And how do you stay on top? I know that you're going to say customer being looking after your customers. How do you stay on top against the competition? I suppose we might have touched on that, but
I think we're really lucky that we've got a brand.
Yeah. That's like an asset, right?
Yeah, and that's recognisable in New Zealand. Made me laugh. A couple of years ago, you know, there were times where who knew Caci? Nobody knew Caci.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how to say the name, and we debated whether we should stick with that name, all of that kind of thing. And then about 2 years ago, I got into a taxi and the driver was so far from our target customer. And, you know, he was this blokey bloke. He was big and, you know, like he was just so far from our target customer. But he knew who Caci was. And I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah.
That's
really
brand
impressive.
penetration.
That's very impressive. Do you think brand is enough, though, in 2026 and beyond?
No, not at all. No. You
business brand versus personal brand.
I think that's one of the things about business. It's never done. You can't ever say you've made it. It's always
you
it's
never
ongoing.
arrive anyway.
No, it's a never-ending journey, and if you feel like you've made it, then you're actually probably going backwards. So you never get to a point where there's no problems or no issues to resolve or no hurdles to climb over, no mountains to climb.
What did you start doing later that you wish you would done sooner?
That's a good question. What do I think? I think probably one of the things that when I look back, I wish I had been more decisive about people. You know, I'm a big believer in the power of the team, but you have to have the right people on the team. So culture and team, hugely important. And if you're not building your culture, then it's building itself. So you have to be really deliberate and you have to keep on it. And I think that probably there's been times where we haven't been on it and it's slipped. And I think some of those things are about accepting people in your team who are not a culture fit and letting them undermine. And, you know, I can if you allow somebody to be in the lunchroom having a moan about things but not actually doing things about it, then you're saying to everybody else that's okay by default. And I think that I should have been on to dealing with those things more aggressively, more quickly than I did. And that's cowardice, really. That's not wanting to confront what really needs to happen. But I think it pulls your business down quite quickly if you let that stuff get away on you. Yeah.
It's fascinating to know that, right? So how do you do this differently now? Do you culture is so key and this is how we do things and this is how we go about doing, like if you're not happy with something, then, you know, just moan about it, you do something about it. Like how do you implement that culture of, even in pharmacy and, you know, in the lunchroom, all sorts of rants and moaning and stuff like that. And at some point I used to think, you know, I can be part of the moaning party, but we need to do something like actually change needs to happen. But how do you make that happen? How do you change the way people do stuff?
That's the culture piece, right? So when and leadership, it's definitely about leadership. You have to create an environment somehow. You have to figure out how to make it okay for people to tell you things you don't want to hear, to ask questions that you don't want asked. Like your short-term thing is, I don't want to even look, you know, I don't want to look under that rock because I know it's got greeblies under it. But actually you have to make it okay for the receptionist or the newest recruit or the whatever to be able to say, I don't think this is right.
Right.
I think we could do better here.
Empowering people to speak up.
Yeah.
And be okay to give their opinion because it's going to be taken into consideration.
And you might not like what you hear.
Yeah, I see. Because that's does not exist in many organizations. People say something and they like no one cares and nothing is going to happen and they think what's the point?
And I think we've suffered from at times.
It's a really problem
at
in New
times
Zealand.
We've suffered from that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
I don't think it's just New Zealand. I think it's part of human nature.
I think some certain cultures have them more, like the French have them.
Yeah, maybe.
Kiwis might have them, maybe Aussies. I don't know, but. Has there been a time in your life where you thought this is really tough and quite a low point?
The low point that really comes to mind for me was we felt we had a system that we could take outside New Zealand. And I still think that's the case. We set up some clinics in London called Skinsmiths. And within 2 years we had 9 clinics, a 10th one about to open. They were about break even, and I absolutely loved them. There was so much that we got right with those clinics, and because we owned them all, it was so much easier to have them exactly the way that we wanted them. The customers and the staff up there really embraced the brand. We got brand traction really quickly, But then along came COVID, and at that point we were back in New Zealand, but I had been going up to London probably every 6 weeks for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And so suddenly I had to decide, am I going to be there or am I going to be here? I couldn't go. And we had one of our, senior team members up there, but she was limited to the amount of time that she could spend up, like the length of time that she could spend up there. And there just came a point where we didn't know what the future held, where we had to go, do we keep pouring money into this? Because although the clinics themselves were getting to break even, we still had head office overheads and that kind of thing. So it was costing us a lot. And Brexit had just happened. We didn't know whether we were going to get another round of COVID, whether everything was going to be shut down again. And we had to say, if we took that money and spent it on the New Zealand business, what else could we do with that? What we're funding there for this very uncertain future. And so we had to pull the plug. And
all of it?
All of it.
Wow.
And we didn't have to. We decided to. But I was still devastated. Yeah. It took me quite a while to get over that.
Why were you devastated?
Oh, it was kind of my next baby, I guess. Yeah, I loved it. I felt we were really getting traction up there. The team were great. Some really good people. We pulled in some really neat people into the clinics and customers, that kind of thing. So
could you have made it somehow without maybe cutting cost with cut cost of somehow? You looked into all of the options. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like it would have been profitable.
No.
If it happens in New Zealand, if we get COVID in New Zealand,
or another pandemic,
or some sort of pandemic equivalent, and many people saying that could happen. What's your contingency plan to keep the brick and mortar is very interesting business right now, given that there's a lot that's going on in the world that is not brick and mortar, right? And there's AI and everything. Have you thought about that? Have you considered what the business could look like if there's a threat to accessibility?
I think for us, yes, of course, we think about things like that. How might we manage in that kind of situation? I'm not convinced that we would be able to lock down in the same way that we did that time, though. I think the tolerance for that would be pretty small. Yeah.
Well, have you considered something like giving people the option, the power to do stuff, to take care of their own?
Yeah, and we even did during, so we were. We had a lot of online consultations and, we're sending out products and treatments and that kind of thing for people to do at home.
Yes.
That kind of thing,
yes. Yeah. And did that work? Did that help?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat. It definitely helped, yeah.
Yeah.
And kept people engaged.
Yes, yeah.
Team engaged, and it kept customers engaged.
Yeah.
But it was one of the strengths of our membership plan was that a lot of our clinics, all of our clinics still had some revenue coming in, even though they were closed, because people were still paying their memberships on the proviso that they would get those services that they were paying for once we opened. So there was a bit of a debt. Once we did get the clinics open, we had a lot of catching up to do, but it meant that those clinics survived.
Are you still struggling from the remnants of COVID, or do you think it's now been able to bounce back?
I think it's less tangible, but I do think there's definitely a bit of a hangover from COVID. Here we are talking about it still. I think it was a huge impact on our lives.
It was a bit of a reset, wasn't
it? And so has that changed people's behaviours? A bit. I mean, people were desperate to come back after being locked down.
Right. I suppose
it's hard to say, I think.
Is the aesthetic sector heading in a different direction, or where is it going to next? With all the technology, we've got AI. I mean, I wanted to ask you about how are you guys innovating in the AI space and how you take care of your skin and the virtual reality. You can do so much. I mean, are you tapping into that stuff?
We're definitely,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I want to talk too much about that in depth. Yeah.
Especially if it's a new thing.
Yeah.
But tell me what you can tell me.
So, well, I think we're an organisation that has always looked at what's the next step. What can we do next? How might we improve the way that customers interact with us and get what they need? And I personally feel that we're kind of on this cusp between finding what we see on social media exciting and interesting and tiring of it, because it's really hard to, there's another new thing and another new thing and another new thing, and there's all of this there's a bit of fatigue at all of these things that I'm meant to do to
catch up.
To catch up.
There's so much to catch up on.
How do you
overwhelming,
translate that into what my already busy life? And this, I should be doing this, and you should be doing this, and you should be doing that. That's the message we keep getting. You know, you should do this, and you should do this, and you should do this, and you should be treating yourself on a Sunday to a spa day or a half spa day or an hour. And it's like, where am I going to find the time to do that when I've got 2 kids and housework to catch up on and emails that I didn't get to on Friday, and I'd really like to have some people over for dinner on Saturday night, you know. So I think there's a bit of fatigue at some of that kind of stuff.
You see it.
How do we translate that back into the real world? And what I can do, what's possible, that doesn't feel like it's overwhelming.
Going back to the basics. It's always the case, like with any new development, there's always like the first thing, and then there'll be 100 other things, and then people just get overwhelmed, and then people just really want to go back to the going back to the McDonald full circle. People always go back to the Big Mac because it's like it's easy. What they know, and it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. And I think, you know, simplifying our life is one of the things that we have to do. It's getting rid of the stuff that we don't need is the harder thing, and actually going, do you know what? I'm just going to have either a salad or soup for lunch every day. That's it. And if it's in a...
Because there's decision fatigue as well.
Yeah.
That is making us tired. If I had to die tomorrow, you had to die tomorrow, what would be the one advice that will help someone make it well and get out of their 9-to-5 job?
Don't give up. Be persistent. Just keep trying. And can I have 2? Yeah. Read widely or listen widely. You know, I think that's one of the things, is that, you know, this kind of podcast wasn't around when we started our business, but you know, I was always a big reader of books, of business books, and you know, we had business coaching for a long time, that kind of thing. So bring in other people, find other ways of getting advice and help.
Absolutely. You've been amazing on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Jackie. I loved having you. We've been wanting you to come on the podcast for a whole year, so I did not give up. So I applied your mantra. How can people engage with Caci if they want to engage with the brand, and how can they go about doing that? If someone who never heard of Caci, what can they do?
Well, probably starting with the website is the best thing, and figuring out where your local Caci clinic is, and, you know, having a chat with those people. Yeah. They're all really, you know, our franchisees are amazing people. They all love it. You know, they're really on the mission. Skin confidence.
All the best to you and to your business. I hope that you go from strength to strength.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed being here.
Likewise. It's been awesome conversation. And I'm glad that we get to share it with the world.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.